What y'all listening to?
Limelight Highlight Podcast.
Welcome back to the show, your positive podcast, safe space, and great place for a positive outlook on life. I don't know about you, but these days are flying by. It's getting weird. It's crazy how we're all adapting to this new norm and continuing to work through life for the most part. The weeks are they're either feeling like really, really long or they're going by super fast. But I got some really exciting and interesting stuff going on soon here at home anyway. But you're going to have to stick around and tune in next week for that news. There's 2 more days to get onto Podchasers and rate and review as many podcasts as you can to get that extra push to raise some money for Meals on Wheels. So if you haven't done that yet, it takes like 2 minutes. Just look up this podcast or any of your other favorite podcasts and just write a simple review. It's going to help Meals on Wheels raise some money. And be sure to do that. Today, we're going to be going over some positive news stories about animals and how the world is being affected due to the coronavirus, as always, and a little bit on how some other countries are taking advantage by this virus by helping their situation. Kind of indirectly helping their situation. But anyway, before we do that, let's talk about today's unrelated fun fact. New York City, also known as the Big Apple, as many know, in America anyway, is the largest city in America. And it's basically the hub where immigrants from all over the world come to start their new lives. From all the way back then to even today. Back when it was a colony, the English took it over in 1664 and they changed the name to New York in honor of the Duke of York, who organized the mission. But here's your unrelated fun fact. A little known fact is that when the Dutch captured New York from the English, they dubbed it New Orange in honor of William III of Orange. So I don't know if it's because it sounds so corny and crappy, or because I'm so used to hearing the phrase Big Apple, but New Orange is, thankfully, that didn't stick. But I thought that was an interesting piece of information that isn't known as well as I feel it should be, especially since it's the largest city in America and one of the more popular cities in the entire world. Just another little weird piece of information and history that you can flex when this lockdown is over to wow some folks whenever you're out. Let's get on with the show. Our first story today we're going to talk about is about sea turtles. And because sea turtles are amphibious, they use the sand to lay their eggs and the ocean to live in. Pretty simple things that sea turtles do that most people know. But due to the effects on climate change and the mass amounts of people, the impact on these sea turtles have put them in the endangered species category. With everything going around the world, stay-at-home orders being initiated, reduced travel, and people assembling in usually packed places like the beach, we're starting to see some of the things that we don't normally see. Fish are returning to the canals of Venice, as I've reported previously. Deer are in the streets of London, which is like the UK's New York. And you already know about all the other animals in normally populated areas from previous podcast episodes that we spoke upon. Now, I've spoken about Thailand in a previous episode and just wanted to bring you up to speed in case you didn't know. The Thai government has placed a ban on international flights as well as encouraging people to stay home, as with many other countries. And with some peaceful times, the rare leatherback sea turtle, which is an endangered species in Southeast Asia, are actually returning to Thailand and nesting for the first time in 5 years. The leatherback sea turtle is one of the largest living turtles and has reportedly made 11 nests on Thai beaches, which is more than any time during the last 2 decades, which in and of itself is amazing. But this isn't happening only in Thailand. Our crazy Florida people down south is they're also seeing numbers of leatherback sea turtles nests also skyrocketing to compared to last year. And only 2 weeks into the summer nesting season of 2020, The staff at the Loggerhead Marine Life Center have found and marked 76 nesting sites for these leatherback sea turtles. And I'm sure that's only the ones that they can actually find, let alone the ones that they haven't seen yet. And since there's no dogs or people or tourists unknowingly walking all over these nests and exposing the eggs, there's a really good chance that the eggs will survive the 60 days until they hatch. Now, by the end of the nesting season, if the numbers continue to increase, it could really help boost the number of vulnerable species, in which in turn obviously can help the ecosystem that they're a part of. And the fact that we have such an impact on our environment is being extremely exposed during these times, and I really wanted to highlight that. Endangered species can make a possible comeback. Other animals are mating in captivity due to the lack of people around. If you follow me on Instagram, I shared a post about panda bears, like actual panda bears. They usually have to do like what is that process where they fertilize a female panda, insemination, whatever that is, instead of like actually having them naturally mate. And for the first time, they're actually mating. Waterways are getting cleaner, and pollution has been dramatically decreased all over the world from big cities. We're literally doing nothing, and the world is healing on its own, and I think that's pretty amazing. Another amazing story that I came across is about dolphins, and I shared this on my Facebook, but I really wanted to look a little bit deeper into what it means. Now, for people who don't know, or people who've seen the movie Avatar, for a really good example, like the world of Avatar, everything lights up at night, all those things, that type of lighting, fireflies for one, it's really cool. So bioluminescence is the light that's given off by organisms like fireflies and deep sea fishes, and also by microorganisms like algae. I mean, I'm sure you've seen those fish, or even some squid have bioluminescence in them. It basically is a crazy chemical reaction that causes them to light up. And since travel and traffic pollution, not only in the streets but around the world and all over the oceans, has been cut down, fish are repopulating once again, and there's an abundance of bioluminescent algae in certain parts of the ocean. Now, the video I'm talking about is taken from this photographer in California named Patrick Coyne, and he was searching for hours in the pitch black off the coast of Newport Beach, and he came across a pod of dolphins. And because there's so much bioluminescent algae, it looks like these dolphins are swimming in like a pool of light, and the light is just streaming off of their bodies. It's pretty amazing. I'll definitely post a link to the video in the show notes, because no matter how in depth I get with the description of how it looked, I seriously wouldn't be able to do it any justice. And it's just something that you're really going to have to see for yourself. So I highly encourage you to check out that link. But there are a few bioluminescent beaches left in the world until recently. And this is just one of those very rare and extremely magical looking things that I hope are here to stay even after the pandemic is over. Plus, more algae and more food. More algae means more food for marine life, and the circle of life goes on, and it just makes me happy knowing that even if it is just for the moment, nature is really starting to balance itself out, and the fact that we have visual proof kind of just makes it all the sweeter. Now, our last story of the podcast is a non-coronavirus related, so I really hope you enjoy the topic. I've had countless discussions about this topic with so many people, so many arguments, but for the most part, the consensus is marijuana should be legal. The age-old conversation that everybody has. It's a subject that for the majority of Americans, we understand that we have really stupid, archaic, and nonsensical laws that we still have in place today that shouldn't be there. You're able to go to a corner store that sells alcohol as long as you're 21 and up, and you can buy any amount of alcohol and drink yourself to death. The amount of damage that alcohol does to your body over an extensive period is horrible. I have family members who are alcoholic and have seen firsthand what those effects can really do to somebody, not only physically, but psychologically. And none of it's good. But nonetheless, it's legal. You can drink as much as your heart desires and kill yourself. And yeah, I know maybe 2 to 3 times more people. I know 2 to 3 times more people who are actually constant smokers of marijuana. They hold down extremely high positions and good paying jobs while maintaining great health. And as the old saying goes, too much of anything can kill you. But to this day, I can't really reference 5, let alone 3 specific cases where someone has used too much marijuana and died. Yet I can name more than 10 people that I know firsthand who are in prison or have been cited for possession of a plant that grows from the ground. So we have stupid laws. Very old people who are representing certain states, cities, and counties who still believe that a plant has been shown time and time again to be useful in positive ways and less lethal than any drug on the market. Yet federally, it is still illegal, and you can still get in trouble for smoking a plant that causes virtually no harm to most users. But what you gonna do? Today, the media is looked at very skeptically. People no longer trust the mainstream media due to constant years of propaganda and the constant agenda and opinion they formulate and push, especially with today's social climate with the whole fake news thing. People don't know who to trust and what to believe anymore, and it turns out to be really dangerous. It's a serious thing that people need to. I don't know the solution. It's not good though. And many of this comes from the constant propaganda to go to war with countries that have zero business that we have zero business being in conflict with. Many of these wars is for natural resources, but they're covered up by this quote unquote freedom excuse. No matter what your opinion is, anybody can get online and understand that we have a very checkered past when it comes to dealing with conflicts that we shouldn't really be involved in. One of the very problematic stigmas and areas that has been pushed has to do with the Middle East and Arab countries. We're told that they have very strict and limited freedoms. And I'm saying all this because today, the last story that we're going to cover is that one of these major Arab countries has just legalized marijuana. Lebanon, to be exact, which is the first Arab nation to legalize cannabis for medical and industrial purposes. This legislation was approved nearly 2 years after it was recommended by a New York-based firm through a consultation with the Lebanese government about alleviating the country's economic crisis in 2018. So it's pretty interesting how things all of a sudden get looked at differently when money gets involved. And, money makes the world go round. But since marijuana has been grown illegally in Lebanon and areas in Lebanon since Lebanon has been ranked among the top 3 biggest Middle Eastern cannabis cultivators in the United Nations, economists have estimated that a medical marijuana industry could really bring in as much as $1 billion in annual revenue. The legislation will also encourage the crop to be used for new legal industries like producing textile fibers and developing pharmaceutical goods like CBD oil and stuff like that. We've covered, along with many other sources on the internet, so much about the benefits of this one plant. It drives me nuts just thinking about how it's still illegal in so many aspects of our world. But Lebanon has already been suffering from dramatic rates of inflation, rising unemployment, and diminishing value of the local currency even before the whole pandemic happened. So now, financial and political experts are now hoping that with the new birth of a booming medical marijuana industry, it could really help resuscitate the nation's struggling economy in the near future. And I think with all these economists and politicians finally realizing the benefits of this plant, that it can bring in more than one way, they're finally getting on board. They say it's never too late, but damn, it's about time. This is a positive thing rather than continuing to push the stigma that this is a bad plan. It causes, whatever nonsense that they like to spout off. And I'm really hoping this country recovers. And I'm especially hopeful that they'll have marijuana to thank, especially because of how conservative the Middle East is. And how sweet would that be? For so many years, people have just been constantly talking trash or kind of propagating marijuana to be such a bad thing, and it happens to be the exact thing that's actually saving their lives. So I really hope it works out for them. Now, before we end the podcast, it's time for our PPDPT segment, positive people doing positive things. And if you follow the Limelight highlight, you